Recording. So, hi, welcome to the virtual author coffee chat. Something I'm glad I came up with, especially for moments like this. My name is Julia Barclay-Morton, and I am an author and wrote a book called The Mortality Shot. And the initial idea for this came from people who'd blurbed the book, but there are other people that I also wanted to talk to, and Lyndon was one of them. We met each other through a group on Facebook called The Binders, which is for women writers. And we've been friends for a while on that. Then we met in Maine in person when she brought me emergency post-its and paper clips while I was working on my memoir in progress, and also donuts. They were amazing. That was exciting. And so we like her. And we also have had many conversations about the overlaps of our work. So we're going to be talking about all of that. So before I get started asking Lyndon about herself, I'm going to read her bio just so you have that. Jennifer Lunden, she, her, is the author of American Breakdown, Our Ailing Nation, My Body's Revolt, and the 19th Century Woman Who Brought Me Back to Life, which was praised by the Los Angeles Review of Books and Washington Post and called a genre-bending masterpiece by Hippocampus. They, by the way, were the accurate ones. Her essays have been published in Creative Nonfiction, Orion, River Teeth, Diagram, Long Reads, and other journals, selected for several anthologies and praised as notable in Best American Essays. She's the recipient of the 2019 Maine Arts Fellowship for Literary Arts, the 2016 Bread Loaf Rona Jaffe. Is it Jaffe? Is that how it's
Jaffe.
pronounced?
I think
Jaffe,
it's Jaffe.
sorry.
Yeah.
I never know. Rona Jaffe Foundation Scholarship in Nonfiction and a Pushcart Prize. So, this book that she wrote, American Breakdown, amazing. You can see I've actually read it. I approved by post-its, right? That's proof. All right. And it's amazing. And before we go right into you reading some of it, I'd just love it if you don't mind telling folks like what went into, the writing of this. I mean, where it came from. There's so much history. I think it's fascinating. So you feel like it.
Yeah. Okay. I'll try to say something that isn't going to repeat. In some ways, the introductory bits from the book do give the story of how it all came to be. But I'll just say that I have what was called chronic fatigue syndrome when I had it when I first was diagnosed, also known as myalgic encephalomyelitis slash chronic fatigue syndrome, and multiple chemical sensitivity. And when I discovered the biography of Alice James, I felt like I had found a soulmate, and ultimately decided I wanted to write a book. And the book became much more than I ever imagined it would be. So that maybe that's my introduction, and then let's see what I wrote. So I'm skipping the first segment just because of time, and I'm just going to read a little over a page. I was 26 years old when I first laid eyes on the gold spine of Jean Strauss's Alice James, a biography, and pulled it down from the shelf. I'd heard about Alice. We had something in common. We'd both been felled by a mysterious fatigue. The book is fragile now. Its cover barely holds onto the spine, and some of the pages are falling out, and most of them bear some kind of markings. Inside, I see the price, $2.50, still penciled inside the front cover. Someone else had owned the book before me. When I bought it, I took a purple pen to her name, crossed it out, and wrote my own and the year, 1994. I'd been sick for 5 years. I didn't know then that the book was treasure in my hands. It would become my company, my work, my healing. At the time, I was the live-in caretaker of a 1789 historic house museum in Maine. Its substantial perennial garden laid out in measured decorum inside a white picket fence. When I think now of that garden, I see it bursting in the violent bloom of high summer stands of white liatris spiking the azure sky, gold rudbeckia 6 feet tall and toppling, aphids on the helianthus, mold on the phlox, weeds overwhelming all the back beds. The garden was too much for me. From the bedroom window on the second floor, I could see the explosion of color, a carnival of red, yellow, purple, and pink. But I rarely looked down upon the garden from the bedroom window, because what I saw more than anything, even from that vantage, was my failure to keep up. For me, the garden was something to be contended with, when I should have been weeding it, taming it, saving it from itself. Instead, I lay in bed in the cool of the oscillating fan, reading about my dead bed comrade, Alice James. In Alice, I met my Victorian counterpart, my kindred spirit, and somehow, reading about her, bright, witty, proud, and stuck, I began coming unstuck. Why was Alice sick? Why was I? From my bed, and with the aid of interlibrary loan and a helpful librarian, I set out on a journey to find some answers. I spent years researching American history, 19th century and contemporary toxicology, biology, medical history, economics, environmental history, sociology, chaos theory, and more. And by the time I finished, things were a whole lot clearer.
That's beautiful. That's just such an amazing opening. And the opening before that is also just you realizing you can't move, right? I mean, that was like your beginning of realizing that too. Is that's the pre-opening, if I recall correctly. Is that right?
The pre-opening is something that my editor, it was like it was basically almost the last thing I wrote for the book was the pre-opening, which my editor had recommended, and it's actually about Alice um
Oh, okay.
swimming
I
with friends
misunderstood.
off the coast of Newport. And
Oh, right.
when he said like, why don't you add in this bit about Alice swimming,
Right.
because they're swimming as like a trope that through the book, and it would be a nice bookend. I was like, I don't
Right.
even know that Alice did swim. And then he, who was happened to love the James family, pointed me to the page, so then I could write about it.
Right, right. That's right. Now I remember. Okay, right. I just thought I forgot which, of course, like I read it all and then I forgot where the
Yeah, well,
beginning was.
and the book is written in segments, right? So
Right.
it's kind of, we'll talk about fractals later probably, but
Yeah.
it's kind of,
Yes.
it's not linear, and so it makes sense that you wouldn't remember for sure what
Right.
where
Which
it begins.
Right. And actually, it's so funny because I mean, it's an amazing opening, and I just love this sort of also the whole thing in there about like the garden and trying to, keeps saving the garden from itself and all of that is like this really interesting metaphor to my mind of all the other possible things. And it's funny because these days now there's like a whole movement to let gardens go wild in the UK, which is very interesting, the gardening capital of the world, it's like there's a whole thing about that. Um, but yeah, actually, it's funny that you mentioned the fractals and the chaos theory because, in fact, it's like seems like a weird leap, but um, I I'm wondering if you would mind actually talking a little bit about that or reading that part because the reason I bring that up in terms of this is somehow it feels like even you finding the Alice James biography is part of that. You know what I mean? It's like this thing of you know what I mean? Like you're
Yeah.
not it's not you weren't like, I know, I'll go find an Alice James biography. That'll work, That
That'll be
wasn't
the beginning of
that
everything.
that'll be the beginning of everything. And yet you did. So I don't know. I'm trying to think of which pages they are.
Luckily, I have my book in PDF, so I'm looking for
I think
chaos
it's
theory.
305 is something about fractals.
Okay, well, let me go to
Yeah.
305 then.
Oh yes, the rivers and trees have fractal-like structures. Yeah, I
Mhm.
thought that uh yeah, that I'm trying to think of how it works as a but just the fractals which then goes into the chaos theory, I think.
Right. So just let me
Yeah.
briefly say,
Yes, it does.
Let me say first the science,
Yeah.
my
Yes.
biology teacher from high school would be shocked that I wrote a book that's a science book. Science was never my strongest thing, but I wanted to write a book about bodies and about my body and about an illness that is thought of as being sort of imaginary. And I knew that I needed to be able to incorporate science into the book in order to legitimize my illness. And so I had to
Hmm.
do the thing that's not my greatest strength. But in the process of researching the book and all the sort of ways that it kept growing in, you know, well, like a river, right? With like more and more creeks, and then whatever the different, or like a tree branch, or even like our respiratory system or our cardiovascular system.
Hmm.
Um, but let me backtrack a tiny bit and just do two brief definitions. So
Hmm.
chaos theory, I mean, this is a very basic definition and many of you already may be aware of it, but one aspect of chaos theory is this idea of the butterfly effect.
Right.
And that was discovered by a meteorologist. It wasn't even like his field. Um, this idea that like even this something as small as a butterfly flapping its wings in Mexico can start off a tornado in Texas or whatever.
Hmm.
And but then there's another element of chaos theory, and that's fractals. And I love, so fractals are I should give the definition for my book because it'll do better than I can do. But they're things that are self-similar in in expanded ways. My horrible definition that like like a tree or like a um I'm looking for my thing so I can just look up fractals because I
Yeah.
know
I mean,
I have a good
I think if you
definition
go to
right
like
there. Here we are.
304,
Yeah, there it is.
305, you got it right
Yes.
there. Yeah.
So Benoit Mandelbrot, he's the one who first saw fractals. So they've always been there, but his brain was such that he saw patterns where nobody in history had ever seen patterns before. And he called those patterns fractals. And he defined them as self-similar systems that look alike at all scales. Um, and he found, and because of his ability to see fractals in that way, he was able to devise a way to measure irregular, or what he called rough forms, including stock market graphs, coastlines. And he also has this beautiful quote. Let's see if it's right here. Yeah, clouds are not spheres, mountains are not cones. And so he found a geometry for branching systems for which there was no geometry. So that's fractals. And I got curious about how how and if chaos theory could be applied to human biology, and discovered that there are researchers starting to do that. Now, Julie, I forget, how do we get on this?
Well,
I,
because actually you mentioned it in the intro about all the things that it brought you to, and I was thinking about it. Just this idea of the irregular, or the thing that doesn't exist yet, and then somebody finds it. And I just feel like when you got, well, I'm just going to call it chronic fatigue because I can never remember how to pronounce the ME's part. If you
yes,
want to say it out loud, because I will never be able to do that. But
I'll
it's
say it.
ME.
I'll say it one more time. It's myalgic encephalomyelitis / chronic fatigue
Okay.
syndrome.
Right.
People do say MECFS, but you say whatever works for you.
Or I can just say MECFS, whatever.
Mhm.
What makes you, is
Well,
that the
that's the
best?
preferred term because
I'll use that.
it was a researcher at the CDC who was dismissive of chronic fatigue syndrome who came up with the name. And it's a name that really, um, Hillary Johnson, who's I quote in the book, she says that's like calling diabetes chronic thirst syndrome.
Right.
It's
Exactly. Right. Right. Yeah.
it's demeaning of the extent of the illness.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, then I will definitely, I just knew I couldn't I couldn't say the full thing, but if
Yeah.
MECFS is okay, then we're
Yeah.
good. It's just me like trying to remember how to pronounce the long word. But I understand the importance for a variety of reasons, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, no, I was just thinking about it because of like the fact that you were felled by MECFS very young, 5 years even before finding the book when you were in your early 20s, and at a time before people really knew a lot about what the heck it was. Even now, there's still a lot of vagueness, like, which of course, as you talk about the history, there's a lot of reason for that vagueness, because it, a lot of women got it. So of course, then it's like hysteria and, that whole thing. And then that ties into Alice James being minimized for being female to begin with. And then whatever was going on with her. And just that, the mysterious lady illnesses, and, all of those things that, if you put something in the female camp there, and of course the fact that it wasn't until the 90s that women were even in medical
Y-
trials at all, right?
yes, a law passed to make that happen, and even then it still doesn't happen all the time, and they don't always separate out men's results from women's results. So, oh, what a mess.
It is. So all the medicines that exist are for bodies that are not like ours to begin with, and then
Yeah.
you have different illnesses and different manifestations. Which, and again, I'll bring this up later in my own weird little world, but that's also why I wasn't diagnosed autistic until I was 57, because women's manifestation is different than men, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera, et cetera. It goes on and on. But like, but basically, I guess that's why I was thinking of that, because I was thinking about how these theories that come out, these things that finally emerge, like fractals. I didn't realize fractals were so recent because they seem so self-evident when you start looking at them. When you look at the trees and the lungs
Yeah.
and the universe and the eyeballs and and you see how they're all so similar. It seems so weird that that's a recent development, which again, I didn't know until I read your book, because I just assumed people knew about fractals, just like, of course, but it's not. And that just shows like how these quote unquote illnesses, I mean, definitely it is an illness, but I mean, just these things that happen, they're defined in a certain way or minimized in a certain way. And it takes like an entire different way of thinking, not
Yes.
not just, to even begin to consider what it might be. Yeah. So,
And it takes an understanding that all illness is understood within a context, and it
right.
takes a certain level of humility that doctors are actually dissuaded from having in med school, where they're bullied if they don't act like they know everything, or if they act like they have feelings. And and so by the time they get out of med school, um, I think it's harder for a lot of doctors to access their humility, because if they don't know something, that means that's shaming to them.
Right.
And from my perspective, and from the perspective of many people with complex multi-system illnesses like mine and like long COVID, if if we just have a doctor be humble and say, you know what, I don't know, we don't know a lot about this illness, but that doesn't mean that your experience isn't real and valid, right? And so when we're understanding that illness is happening within a and understood within a context, and then we can be humble enough to understand that our context is self-limiting, and
Hmm.
that we need to be open to the possibility that there might be new contexts that we are moving towards in our research and our science, that might be able to help us better understand illnesses that up until now have been called, like, what do they call them, trash bin illnesses or something.
Right,
Is-
right. Yeah. Well, actually, I found out, and this is interesting. I won't go into all this. We'd be here forever. But I did find out in the 80s, similar time frame, it was a little bit earlier, uh, when I was doing some research for a play I was directing, Marat Sade, that schizophrenia then at that point was literally a trash bin diagnosis. They just said we put everything we don't understand into that. But he was the only one. He was the guy that ran the halfway house. All the people that ran the other institutions, which there were a frightening amount of in this little part of Connecticut, by the way, they
Yeah.
were all like, we know this, we know that. And the only person who I trusted was the guy who said, actually, we don't know anything. And, you know, and same with for me, because I got long haul COVID, similar
Yeah.
to how early you got this, you know,
Yeah.
ME/CFS. I got it right away in April 2020, I guess technically was when it kicked into long haul. And
Yeah.
you know, that mystery, you know, and there was this attempt to understand it. And the only doctors I trusted were the ones who would just listen. And even if all they could do is shrug and say they didn't know, at least there was a sense of like, okay, you know, this is something and we're still, you know, trying to figure it out. And I must say, though, unlike a lot of, there were some people that were very angry at doctors at that time. And I just kept saying,
Mhm.
you know, they're trying to build the plane while they fly it. So, like, we have to have
Yeah.
a little bit of understanding. But there was a big difference between the ones who wanted to kind of make it they were so freaked out, they wanted to make it they understood. Whereas the vascular neurologist I ended up working with a couple months later after my dissection, who I said, I think this was long haul related. And she said, and this blew my mind, she's like, well, in April, we were all looking at each other saying, is everything we learned in medical school wrong?
And yes, a large percentage is.
Right. And you know, and that, like, so that was kind of amazing for her to tell me that in July. You know, I mean, that was just, that shows you how probably in shock they all were that she even said that out loud. But like, you know, this thing of, and I feel like the only reason people are taking long haul seriously at all is because doctors got it. Male doctors got it, not just female. Like, in other words, this wouldn't be like, there wouldn't be any, it's still very confusing and very hard to find treatment even now, believe me. But like, it's at least there's a sense that it's real. Like, nobody is pretending it's not real, which I think for you, with the people who had ME/CFS for decades, I think there was a huge push to make you guys all feel, gaslight you into saying it's not real, right?
Yes. Yeah, and that's an early scene in the book, relatively early, is when the first doctor. So I came down with a case of mono. That's what started everything for me. And the mono came just a few months after I'd moved to Maine to start my adult life. And the first I got a doctor, and I went to her hoping she could help me with whatever this mysterious thing was that was not going away, and I was completely unable to work. Um and finally, and I needed forms signed so that I could get welfare and not have to work in exchange for my welfare. And she signed them at first, and then she, once my mono test came back that the mono was gone, she refused to sign the paperwork and said I was just depressed. And
Yeah.
that's, I cannot say how, I don't have to tell you how devastating it is when you're as sick as I was, to have your doctor tell you you're not sick at all.
Yeah.
It's traumatizing,
Hmm.
and it's not healing. It's the opposite. It's traumatizing.
Yeah. And you know, that reminds me of, and this was the other reason I was thinking of the butterfly effect, about how small things can change things. About somewhere in the middle of the book, you also talk about how, you know, the movement towards narrative medicine also started at Columbia Presbyterian, where I also found the doctor who was good. I live up near
Ah,
there. It's a good place. It's a good, if you got to get
yeah.
sick, you know, get sick up here. Um, but they, you know, the narrative medicine thing started there, the official one, and the idea that as something as quote unquote simple as listening to your patient, you know, and helping them talk through what's going on and elucidate, you know, bringing that in. And all the long haul people I've dealt with recently, the PA and the doctor, my appointments were an hour long. These are not like your
Hmm.
usual appointments, you know, it's like they want to know the whole story, and you send them like a freaking novel before you even show up about what happens. And like, that is so empowering. And my primary care doctor, when I first met him a couple years back, same thing, he took forever and listened to all the things. And it's like, just that just changes everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, it like calms your whole system down to have somebody, a care professional, actually take the time to listen to you and not rush you through. But our system doesn't lend itself to that
Right.
because it doesn't
Exactly.
pay doctors for hour-long appointments. I wanna make sure we get Naomi's comment because it's important. She
Yes, I
said,
think so. I was noticing too. Yeah, go.
yeah,
Yeah.
she said, "And to think how often women, especially Black and brown women, are dismissed by medical professionals." So that's like a
Even
whole other
worse.
level. As a white woman, I am aware that that happens, but it is a whole other level for Black and brown women, particularly around
Absolutely.
pain,
Yep.
um, and I'm sure many others. Yeah. Thank you,
Yeah.
Naomi.
Yeah, super important point. And it's yeah, it's just devastating the numbers and the way it's just devastating. And it's just so involved. So like on top of everything else with the medical system, you have, and I think you talked about this, it also relates to the history of white supremacy in this country
Yeah.
and the way it was started and all of that. But speaking of history, I want to I also want to bring in this amazing thing that I didn't know that you have in there, which is the actual derivation of the American dream, what it was meant to be. So do you have that page or not, or do
I'm
you want to
I'm
just
gonna
describe it?
I'm gonna find it again because I did have it, and then I just have to get back to my PDF and
Yeah,
plug in American Dream.
I should have been better about putting down the numbers of the pages. I was just so excited. I forgot to put, I was like just marked so many things,
Well, I
but
just love
hopefully you can find
the
it.
whole PDF thing because
It is amazing.
okay, here we are. See how quick that
Okay.
was?
That's great.
Um,
Yay.
and this, I learned this, maybe I was listening to a podcast or something, or I read it while I was still writing the book towards the end of the time. And I was like, oh, that's going in. So I wrote, to most people, the American dream is the idea that anyone who works hard can achieve success in this country because you don't have a rigid class system and everyone is afforded equal opportunity. But literary scholar Sarah Churchwell, author of Behold America, The Entangled History of America First and the American Dream, says that the common association of the American dream with, quote, gritty individual achievement is a deviation from its original meaning. The term was first regularly used, she says, in response to monopoly capitalism. In a 2019 interview in Pacific Standard, Churchwell explained that she found the earliest references to the term in the Gilded Age media. So that's Alice James's time. And she says, there was this new thing called a multimillionaire that America had never seen before. And people on the left said, if this multimillionaire is allowed to take hold of American society, it will be the death of the American dream. One newspaper called it an un-American dream because the American dream is egalitarian. It's of equality, of opportunity for all, not just for the privileged few.
Yeah, and then it even goes on to say, I found it, and they saw very quickly that if you allow that kind of private wealth to consolidate and establish itself, you're going to replicate an aristocracy, which is exactly what the American government was designed to resist. So I just think that's mind blowing, and it just shows why it's so important to know your history about these things because like I thought I knew the history of that and then I didn't, and to go into these granular details because in there you see how so many I'm not going to go into my whole rant about it that I was having earlier, but the amount of ideas that come from this country that then get bastardized into something like literally the opposite thing. And then that's what takes hold, and and for those of you, I don't think you knew this, but I had mentioned that the precondition for people to get the post World War II money from us was that they have universal health care. That was the precondition. So that's why Europe has universal health care. FDR wanted us to have universal health care, but he was blocked by the marketing people, and they colluded with the anti-communist people and made people think it had something to do with communism. But meanwhile, all of Europe has universal health care. Hello,
Right.
and that was weirdly enough our idea. But do we have it? No. It's like it's just extraordinary. It's extraordinary. Like, yeah, anyway. That's but I also just want to, because I've got so many things. Now I'm going to make a very weird segue. But speaking of history, we both, not only did we both read about Alice James, we also read William James.
Oh boy.
And we realized that we both have, I have an epigraph on my website. It's different, but very similar to the epigraph that Lyndon has in one of them, one of the chapters. And I was wondering if you could read that and I will read mine, and we will talk about this kind of interesting awareness that James had back in the day about all the stuff we're talking about.
Yes. I am just looking for that in my, let's see. Oh, here we go. Here we are. I got it. You ready?
Okay,
Okay.
yes, I'm ready.
So I put this, this was an epigraph that I added to chapter 12 of my book. So right towards the end, when I was starting to want to, I'd had all these ideas in my branching fractal system, but then I wanted to find a way to bring it all together. And I began doing it in this chapter, I think. And William James, in an essay called The Hidden Self, wrote, "The ideal of every science is that of a closed and completed system of truth. Phenomena unclassifiable within the system are therefore paradoxical absurdities and must be held untrue. Only the born geniuses let themselves be worried and fascinated by these outstanding exceptions and get no peace till they are brought within the fold. Your Galileos and Darwins are always getting confounded and troubled by insignificant things. Anyone will renovate his science who will steadily look after the irregular phenomena. And when the science is renewed, its new formulas often have more of the voice of the exceptions in them than what was supposed to be than of what were supposed to be the rules." And then I
Yeah.
love that. And then Julia, I this was a quote I hadn't read before, but your quote is, they go so together so well.
Yeah, I'll read it if you want.
Yes, please.
So this one I found in a footnote, which is hilarious when you hear it, from God, varieties of religious experience. There are infinitely more things unadapted to each other in this world than there are things adapted. Infinitely more things with irregular relations than with regular relations between them. But we look for the regular kind of thing exclusively and ingeniously discover and preserve it in our memory. It accumulates with other regular kinds until the collection of them fills our encyclopedias. Yet all the while, between and around them lies an infinite anonymous chaos of objects that no one ever thought of together, of relations that never yet attracted our attention. Amazing, right? Just
I love that. And
ah,
it makes me want to ask Julia,
yeah,
because your website is called The Unadapted Ones, right?
yep.
Do you, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, I came up with it because of this quote, and as I think I mentioned to you earlier, the weird thing is, like, okay, so now I know I found out, I got diagnosed autistic at 57 in the middle of long haul COVID and everything else. It's a whole story, but and I'll read something about a little bit of the beginning of all that. But this website and all of this was pre my knowing I was autistic. I just knew I was unadapted, and I knew that all I cared about was other unadapted ones, and I made it very clear in terms of teaching my workshops and stuff. I'm like, if you're looking for a formula for bestseller, please do not come to my workshop. But if you are looking to find what you want to do and to find your unique, thing that you're doing, then we're here, and it was just sort of this idea. So yeah, and then I discovered I was autistic, which is like, oh, and so it looks like I started this website in response to that. But and I was saying to you earlier that to me this is all my experience with writing. I wrote stage text for a long time, way before I started writing the prose I do now. And I found that every time I wrote one and put it up and we did stuff with it, my life would catch up to it a couple years later. I was always way out ahead of myself. And as I also started reading about unmasked autistic texts, a woman, not a woman now, sorry, non-binary, Remy Yergo Originally, the book was published under her other name, so that's why I get confused. Called Authoring Autism, and was writing about what that would mean to have an unmasked text. And I thought, that's what so even way before, so now we're talking like 20 years ago, I was writing this stuff from that point of view without even knowing it, right?
Mm.
So it's so fascinating how the creative self somehow knows a lot more than I know. So, yeah, yeah.
So do you want to read epistemology, or do you want to say more about the unmasked text,
I
or
think
might?
I think I think I'll read it from it because okay, so yeah, I'll just so you know, this is from the mortality shot, which is a bunch of different texts that I wrote that I realized yes, that all deal with mortality. That I didn't even realize I'd written a bunch of things about mortality, and then yeah, I did. And it includes a stage text also called Respiration. Epistemology is a mixture of epistemology and epidemiology on purpose, which it was so funny because even the publisher thought I'd made a mistake. I'm like, no, that was on purpose. And this is about my first 99 days of having COVID, and yeah, which is the very, very beginning. So I'll just read it because it's in a numbered format. So I'm just going to read it to give you an idea, and you'll just hear it, and I'll stop talking about it. Epistemology 99 days. 1. My great grandmother died of the Spanish flu in 1918 in Ansonia, Connecticut. 2. I feel connected to her now in a visceral way in our apartment on West 204th Street in Manhattan. Indeed, felt her presence before I got sick. I saw it coming in late January, felt it in my bones. No, more precisely, my lungs. A crushing heaviness in my chest, making it hard to breathe, a physical presentiment. Begged New York City to shut down weeks before it did. Unsurprisingly, no one listened. 3, language is only approximate. The body is where this is happening. Its language stores the knowledge. 4, no, that's a lie. 5, I can only access bodily sensations via neurological channels, organizing it within milliseconds as my so-called experience. 6, Buddhists knew this perhaps? This is why life on earth as we experience it is called Maya, an illusion, a dream, a fiction. 7, is the witness real, the vagus nerve? 8, maybe this is all a hypothalamus after party. I know you have something to say about that one. 9, the energy surges like jolts of electricity shooting through my body from soul to crown out of the blue, usually when sitting or lying down. 10, the pins and needles in my legs, the newest symptoms. Neuropathy is what the neurologist diagnosed, who struck the back of my ankles with his little hammer, only to see neither of my feet move. Peripheral neuropathy, which on the charts reads pleural neuropathy, obsessed with neurology. 11, am I damaged for good? Damaged goods? Anything good about damage? 12, will I heal fully or partially? 13, the chorus of I don't know from both doctors and my own research. 14, the endless stream of scary articles based on non-peer reviewed research, reading them too late at night on my phone. 15, not good. 16, the fear of clots and heart attack and stroke, and before that of hypoxia in my lungs. 17, I am lucky though, only minor neuropathy in my feet mostly, a sense of smell that comes and goes, steamroller fatigue. 18, this is considered lucky. 19, no one knows anything. 20, my body though, it does know. My cells won the battle, but is virus RNA masquerading as antibodies, Trojan cells waiting to attack? That's a theory in one of the frightening articles. 21. I'm writing this at dawn. The sky had been hot pink at the building horizon. Now the whole sky is bright pale, waiting for the blue to color itself in. 22. I could not sleep and decided to get up to write this. 23. Did I mention the burning of the esophagus, that which mimics a sensation of heart attack, radiating out like a mushroom cloud in the chest, making you sit upright to ask, is it gastritis? My lungs pleural in embers, my heart on fire? Checking the pulse oximeter for heart and oxygen readings, playing doctor at 3 a.m. 24, the sleepless nights, afraid that if I fall asleep, I might not wake up. What if I'm wrong? 25, the nights of having to access somehow that deep, still place, vagus nerve, God, mind, witness, to ask it to ER or not to ER. 26. I do not go to the ER. Imagine the scene. Imagine the looks of the doc seeing a middle-aged woman and thinking, panic attack. Oh, she has nerves. Imagine my lack of desire to face withering contempt or condescension alone, since no one can join me. No male gaze in the form of my husband to mitigate this. Also, can't see making the paramedics walk up and down a top floor walk up. My codependent fears outweighing even the fear of dying. Imagine. 27. Walking into the door jam at 2 a.m. in the dark after reading one of the scary articles on my bright phone, adding a minor concussion into the mix. 28. Surprise. 29. This is a day. What? Now at time of writing, day 99. 30. Some people count the weeks. 31. We are a cabal, the long tails, the long haulers. They don't know what to do with us. If doctors didn't get it too, I doubt anyone would believe us, but they do, male doctors. So now we are real. We are believed. 32. Is it all lodged in my brain now? 33. The impossibility of calm when needed most. 34. Let it be just as it is. 35. The mantra. 36. Breathing. 37. The moment of calm in which I know I will be okay, like touching the bottom of the ocean floor beneath all the ruckus on the surface. 38. The inexplicable intuition that I will live to 98 and die of old age, quote, happy as a clam. 39. Seriously, that was the wording of the intuition, happy as a clam. Let us hope clams are indeed happy. 40. And looking out at the ocean. 41. Perhaps Westray, the view from Kerbist, where the North Sea and Atlantic Ocean meet, more on the Atlantic side, at the beginning or end, depending where you start of the Western Walk. 42. May's Sand, the seals that follow me as I walk along the shore, their heads popping up like U-boat periscopes, giving me the side eye. This white sand and clear blue-green sea where my soul resides stubbornly, waiting for me to return. 43. As of now, not allowed to do so. I am an American, citizen of the pariah state, a death cult. 44. For real. It's like Jim Jones is president and we're being forced by his minions to drink the Kool-Aid. 45. A siren. A mournful siren. A reminder. You are the lucky one. You are alive. And the fear. Will that be me next? 46. My best friend had to remind me when I was trying to muscle through work obligations around day 20 or so that were crushing me. You have what could be a fatal disease. 47. I thought she was laying it on a bit thick. 48. She was right. 49. Friends who are not sick posting scary articles over and over. I hate them. The ones who are on the sidelines and have the luxury to mull it over like it's a science experiment or a fucking game of odds. I know this isn't fair, but it's how it feels. 50. The fear is impossible to describe. Such a tiny word for such a tsunami of sensation. 51. It's not all in my head any more than all your experiences or mine. 52. PTSD informs this, mine, yours, the nation's, the world's. We're being traumatized en masse. 53. The people who believe are death cult leaders, even more so. They are the Kool-Aid distributors. When they wake up, if they do, they will almost surely collapse. 57. The rest of us, what can be said? We cling to the idea that an election will change this. I do. Is this naive? 55. Nothing is normal. And now we're banned from Europe, the United States of COVIDiots who can't wear masks to save one another because freedom. 56. Finally, our eternal adolescence is ending with consequences. Will we learn? How many more people will have to die? 57. To have this is to have the body politic woven into one's cells. 58. The political is personal, to reverse the old feminist saw. 59. I knew it was anyway, but now my body is backing me up. 60. Sometimes I blame myself for the fear of it, as if that brought it to me, a tortured reading of Artaud's notion of who did and did not succumb to the plague. He said those who were not afraid were spared. Well, we now know that formulation, as seductive as it appears, is flawed. 61. Did my husband and I get it from the guy who installed our new Wi-Fi the week before the shutdown? 62. Maybe. He didn't know either. We did not wear masks or gloves. I wiped everything down after he left. It was all about surfaces. At that time, we were told masks did not matter. Now we know they do. 63. Vietnam knew. They have 0 deaths. Life, as it turns out, is not cheap in Southeast Asia, as General Westmoreland claimed in 1974. No, it's cheap here in the land of the big PX, where there appears to be a fire sale on the vulnerable. 64. This is so much less clever than I'd hoped. Instead, all you're getting is the raw footage. 65. I am writing this naked, literally, sitting on my meditation chair in front of a gated window that opens out to a fire escape, the street 5 stories below, quiet at dawn. 66. My cat Ugo's butt and tail and hind legs are visible. He follows me around the apartment at night when I pace, then half hides behind the study divider, visible and not. 67. When I sleep, he curls up at my feet, and sometimes the nights I've been most afraid, he sleeps next to my head, his purring so loud in my ear, emanating from his chest, the pulsing of his heart and lungs, a reminder of a calmer pulse. 68. I am so tired now. 69. But if I try to sleep, I will turn and turn like a rotisserie chicken trying to get comfortable. 70. I will obsess over the prickly feeling that comes and goes in my legs and the bottom of my feet. 71. Sometimes I stare at my veins. Are they larger today, more pronounced? 72. It's scary to even say I'm getting better. 73. What if it hears me and comes back? 74. This shit makes you superstitious. 75. On some days I've actually said, "Get behind me, Satan." 76. And I am not religious. 77. This shit makes you religious. Belief in a false god, any god will do. 78. But I do believe in something, but hesitate to name it lest it diminish to human scale. 79. So the writing always feels false. If I believe naming diminishes, what the fuck am I doing? 80. Hugo's hind legs are up in the air now, his tail splayed forward. 81. When I was a child, I wrote numbers from 1 to as long as I kept writing. I don't know when I stopped, just numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. You get the idea. 82. I forgot to tell the diagnostician about the dolphins. 83. Did I mention? My brain is now, in fact, being examined. 84, which is, of course, what every fourth grade teacher tells her unruly students needs to happen. 85. I thought when I was around 13 or 14, I could learn to communicate with dolphins. I read John C. Lilly. I knew it was possible and thereby save the world because they are so much smarter than us. 86. This was a common theme. 87. Always trying to save the motherfucking world. 88. As if it ever wanted to be saved, or even if it does, why on earth would it be me that could do that? 89. No, that logic never stops me. 90. Before the Dolphins, age 11, 12, I was an evangelical Baptist who was going to save the world by saving your soul. I knocked on doors, witnessing. I handed out God as love pencils. 91. Before that, I tried to figure out how to have a world without money. I lay awake at night, age 5 or 6, trying to sort this out, staring up at the ceiling, my Winnie the Pooh bed spread on top of me, the Winnie the Pooh lampshade to my left on the nightstand, all of my stuffed animals lined up on the right against the wall, just so. I tried too to imagine what the French looked like in chains, something my first grade teacher had told us, no doubt. This was 1969 in rural Maine. 92. After the Dolphins, it was theater and politics. 93. And now it's my body and many other bodies, millions of us, the ravaged site of this body politic where battles raged. Can it be of service? 97. I will go to the post COVID recovery center of Mount Sinai on what will be day 101. 95. Can they help me? Can I help them? 96. Can this body save the world? Our bodies? Ourselves? 97. Mine, yours. 98. The rising sun rinses the sky pale bright. Now I will try to sleep again. Sometimes this works. 99. Recounting days like sheep, March 23rd to June 30th, 2020. Anyway.
Oof.
There.
I have a question for you, Julia.
Sure. What?
So there was I don't remember which number, but you talk about your brain being examined, and that's where you
Yep.
slipped in that in the midst of having long COVID, in the midst of the height, the beginning of the pandemic, you also were getting evaluated for autism.
Yep.
And I'm curious to know, and this probably relates to that. I love that idea of the unmasked text. I'm so intrigued by it, and I'm just wondering how does being autistic impact your writing?
There's nothing it doesn't impact in terms of my
Yeah.
writing. I realize now, including up to and including my my lack of use of contractions for the most part. Apparently, that's an autistic thing. And people are always like, why don't we use contractions? For some reason, I'm like, oh, I thought it was just I got like harassed by English teachers, but apparently it's an autistic thing, or it can be. I'm not, I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of autistic people, mind you. So
Mhm.
it's not, let me just quickly add that. But yeah, there's like, it's not like we're some glommy thing.
No.
But yeah, I honestly, now that I know, this is kind of what I'm writing about, right? So like right before this, I was writing a memoir about yoga and how it helped me through trauma and my yoga training, which is 2019, which is right around the time I started this website. And then through a variety of reasons that are, it's too, complicated to go into right this second, but I began to understand I might be autistic. And so right before lockdown, I went to a couple of groups for women that thought they might be, and it was just the weirdest experience. And it was like, oh my God, I thought I was going to walk into a room of rain men, and instead I walked into a room of people that looked like the people I would sit with at lunch in a confusing lunch place. You know what I mean? There's like if I went into a cafeteria and there were people sitting around, I'd be like scared because that's my first reaction is fear with a group, and if I saw those women, I'd go sit there. It's like that's what it felt like. It was like, oh, these are my people. It was so weird. And a lot of things, and then I started the diagnostic process, but because of COVID, literally my very first interview was Zoom as opposed to in person, like it was meant to be. uh and it was the day two of my actually having acute COVID. And so I was like in this whole fog talking to this
Oh.
person, but then they didn't know how to diagnose online yet. So it waited a year before somebody could sort that out. And that's when I got the diagnosis. But meanwhile, I kind of knew already because really it's like a bit like being diagnosed gay. It's like you don't really need a diagnosis, but but you need it to be like official for reasons.
Yes.
And because I knew I was going to write about it, and I'm like, nobody's going to believe me. And I need this, affirmation from these stupid people. And I did. And it was very like mind blowing. Like I didn't think the actual diagnosis was going to have that huge of an effect because I'd kind of really wrapped my mind around it was probably the case, but it did because it was somebody outside of me. So any imposter syndrome I had of like, but you've been
Yeah.
able to do this thing and that thing and all the things people say to me, she was like, oh no, it's really clear you're autistic. I was like, it is. Because I thought it was going to be very confusing at least. And she was like, no, it's not. And I was like, oh, okay. And I actually was kind of pleased, but also freaked out. And yeah. So what was oh my God, what was your
I
question? I
asked
don't
you
even know what
how
your
being
question. Oh,
autistic
the
impacts your
writing.
writing.
Right. So then I looked back at my writing. This is what there is a reason. And I was like, oh my God, look at this. And then I started looking at these other autistic writers. Catherine May was the first person who really caught my attention, who wrote The Electricity of Every Living Thing. And I heard her on Terry Gross while she was talking about wintering before I knew she was autistic. I was just listening to her. You know how you hear a voice of someone? She was like, and you just stop everything and you're listening. And I literally sat down on my not incredibly clean kitchen floor to listen to her because I couldn't stop listening. And then I found out she was autistic, right? And it was like, oh my God. And I just realized that there's something to it. And I'm still sorting all that out right now. I mean, in the memoir, it's a researched memoir now. I'm also looking at the timeline of autism because when I was born, the year I was born is the first year they used an electric cattle prod on a poor girl who was climbing a bookcase, and they started the really punitive ABA stuff,
Yeah.
which, by the way, is the same people that did gay conversion therapy.
Yeah.
Same exact people. And they've stopped, well, they haven't completely stopped gay conversion therapy, but at least that's been discredited. But everybody and their brother, who's a parent of somebody autistic, wants them to go to ABA so the kids will look normal because people are, the stigma is so big and parents are so freaked out by the stigma, they're still sending their kids to, there's sort of a kinder, gentler ABA now, but it's still the same bullshit, different day. And it causes a lot of suicidality. It causes PTSD. If
Yeah.
you ask any adults who've been through it, they are totally traumatized by it, even if their parents were happy that they looked normal. So But what I realized over time is I did it to myself. Like I did ABA to myself, you know, because I got all the messages that who I was wrong. And I feel like my writing and my stage text, which always I let come from a place that wasn't, you know, heady, it
Yeah.
wasn't controlled. I think that part of me, that's where it came out. That's where it came out because it could. It was allowed out. I didn't know what it was,
Yeah.
but I knew it was interesting, kind of, and people seemed to think it was. And so now I'm looking back and seeing that, and I'm looking at what I'm doing now, and it's just, you know, there's a lot. It's such a multi-layered question. And in fact,
Yeah.
as I'm writing and putting the memoir together, I'm trying to actually allow that in there. So I'm trying not to rewrite everything to smooth it out. I'm actually trying to kind of see if I can let the layers be there. I don't know. You know, I'm still working all that out. Yeah.
I have we're getting to the winding down point
Yes,
to
we
just
are.
Q&A, but I have two questions
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
One, do you want to like summarize for people a little bit about the book that you're working on?
I can do. Yeah, it's what it is it's a it I've got a working title. I've got a couple working titles, so I'm not going to go there with that yet, but what it is it's a memoir of somebody who realizes that who finds out they're autistic at 57 in the middle of long COVID, and going back to reframe my life, but also including the timeline of autism, meaning how autism has been misunderstood and understood, and also some surprising things as well. Like I found this French dude, you know, totally unexpected in the 60s, who was doing the opposite of ABA. He was just letting kids be themselves in the mountains in France, you know, and he's related to philosophers that were a huge deal in my PhD, Deleuze and Guattari, and like what? Like, and then, you know, through that found this woman, Erin Mann, in Canada. Actually, she's up at in Quebec doing all this work on this stuff. And so it's just like the, this whole thing has emerged from finding out who I am, you know, and then finding out why I haven't known who I was until now,
Mm,
which seems like it all relates to all of this, you know. I mean,
yeah.
and we were talking about, I just want to quickly bring it back to you before we go to questions, is that, you know, your book is wisely referred to as genre bending, and then I've got this hybrid thing, and then my memoir is also going to have a hybrid quality too, with stage. It's going to have a lot of different kinds of text. And I feel like we do that not to be experimental, but because it's the only way to actually, you know, um, get to these things that don't have words, that don't necessarily have easily accessible words, because their experiences outside, they're the unadapted or the
Mhm.
irregular experiences. And even though William James could be a pompous idiot at times, he certainly got that right, you know. And yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, that's great. Thank you for that.
yeah, yeah. And your book is really was just beautiful. I just want to quickly say too, just to add to that, like just how exciting it was to see how you structured it. It gave me a lot of ideas, and it, you know, I hope everyone reads both. If you haven't read Lyndon's book, read it. Hopefully you'll read mine as well.
Yeah.
Mortality Shot, if you haven't. This is our little plug for both of our books here.
Well,
And also, if you haven't, Alice James' biography is also very good.
yes,
So
it is.
that's a whole thing. But
Oh,
let's. Oh, sorry. No, go
before
on.
you do, there's just because you just said William James was a little pompous, it reminded me of an Alice James quote.
Yes.
Um, I had
Yes.
to, so I found it quickly. It says,
Great.
when William wrote her a pitying letter that included his perception of her, quote, stifling slowly in a quagmire of disgust and pain and impotence. And this is him trying to be compassionate, right?
Mm, mm.
She parried by informing him that she and Catherine, her beloved, had, quote, roared over his letter, quote, for I consider myself one of the most potent creations of my time. She threw in a dig at her professor brother, though I may not have a group of Harvard students sitting at my feet drinking in psychic truth, I shall not tremble, I assure you, at the last trump. Nor did she.
Nor did she. And in fact, by the end, he gave her credit for that. That's the other
Yes.
thing that's so great, and made sure her
She
diaries were in
she
his writing.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
she
she
was
could
the
knock him
one.
down. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she could knock him down, but in the end, he defended. I mean, I think he defended her and her writing and
Yes.
was her biggest champion after she
Yeah.
died, which is kind of amazing. So their relationship was clearly kind of beautiful in a way, especially given the context of that time and that era. You know, it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, should we take some time for
Yeah.
questions and comments?
So I'm going to change it so you can unmute yourself if you want, or you can also put up a little, in the reactions button, you can put up your hand if you'd like to be called on, or if no one else is talking, you can go, or if you don't want to speak, you can also put it in the chat. So actually, before we actually take, so there were some people that had questions. Amanda Dow, did you want to ask her that in person, or do you want me to read it on the chat? Because the question was, I've always wanted to ask you, Lyndon, why you stayed in the US instead of returning to Canada, when where I believe healthcare is less expensive and more readily available. Do you feel like answering that, or?
Yeah, yeah, I can answer that. Um, at the beginning, when I was really sick, my dad tried to come and take me back, and there was just no way in hell. I dreamed of my freedom as a child for years, and I loved Portland. I'd started to make some friends, and I was sick as a dog, but I was not going back. And I wouldn't have been able to manage moving back to Canada anywhere unless it was into my parents' house. And that would have, my dad, even when I was healthy, he couldn't stand, like, if I'd be reading in bed, he would like stop and clear his throat and ask me to like change the litter or fold some towels. Like, he couldn't stand me being still. So that would not have been a good place for me. And then later there have been some times the problem is I love Portland, Maine so much. I love it so much. And I have searched for years, probably decades, for some place that I could live that I would love as much as Portland. And after Trump was elected, one of the ways that I survived was laying in bed and using Google Maps to, you know how you can actually click a button and it'll show you a street view. Well, I was just clicking around, looking at various mid-sized Canadian cities on the East Coast. And we actually went and looked, my husband and I, we actually identified the city we would go to. St. John, New Brunswick is beautiful and it's as close to Portland as possible in terms of its feel. And in the end, we couldn't leave. So I think we'd probably live longer if we moved to Canada because the healthcare is so much better, and um, guns aren't the same kind of thing. And I tell you the truth, like even my husband notices it, and he's not Canadian. We cross the border into Canada, and our systems feel calmer. And
Mhm.
like that's the thing that Americans don't understand is these systems, our healthcare systems, where like in Canada it's taken for granted everybody's taken care of. Not perfectly. Um and I don't think there's dental coverage unless you have private insurance. Um but here in America it's this like one person standing on top of another in order to get things, and that affects our nervous systems. And the same with guns. All the shootings that we have in America make us feel unsafe. And if you've never lived in a place where that isn't a thing, you don't know how much it's affecting your nervous system every single day. So that's a long answer. Basically, I'm in the wrong country, but I can't help it because I'm in the right city.
I totally relate to that. It's exactly how I feel about New York City, which makes no sense. But like in my
Yeah.
case, as an autistic person, it's the only place in the world I don't feel like I'm too much.
Oh,
Even
wow.
London, I felt like I was too much I lived there for 8 years, and that's where I got used to having health care as well. And when I came back here, I was horrified. But yeah, it's the only place. Everywhere else, so like even though health wise, there's a million reasons was like, oh my God, what the hell are you doing there? But psychically, it's where I can be. So that's part of
Wow.
health too,
Yes, it is.
right?
That's a good point. And I feel like I can be fully me here in Portland. It's very
Yeah.
politically, I can basically say what I want and trust that the person I'm talking to has the same beliefs. It
Yeah.
it feels very safe.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of, yeah, there's a whole bunch of reasons for things. But Amanda, do you want to say, I mean, I see your quote. Do you want to say something out loud, or are you enjoying doing the chat? It's either, it's up to you.
No, I'd
Okay.
rather speak actually. I don't write well.
Yeah.
I'm dyslexic. But
Go for it. Go for it.
no, I was very interested in that because as I read your book, the whole time I kept thinking, I mean, part of the book that I'm working on is how leaving the United States allowed me to save my life
Oh,
because I finally had a rest and it's so many dimensions that I didn't even know I needed it. It wasn't just a question of being able to lie down. It was that moment when I was walking home from the village alone late at night and realized that I had no fear, none.
oh,
There was no reason to fear anything. And that I had relaxed so deep into my bones, so deeply that it's a rest that's indescribable, as you say, to somebody who doesn't know what it's like to leave. And I had been living in industrial quarters of Oakland before that. So it was pretty extreme. I had bullet holes in my window.
Mm.
So I had been caught in shootouts, and so the contrast was remarkable. But also, I've been my illness is recognized by the state, and so I have all medical care free, period. It's completely free. I don't pay anything anymore, anything. And I can go in for a cold and it's covered because it's recognized that I have a lifelong illness. And sometimes I go out and, the doctors aren't perfect. Sometimes the doctor looks to me like a teenager. I can't believe she's actually graduated from high school, from medical school. But still, it's free. And I walk out and I think, I mean, even talking about it, it makes me want to cry
yeah.
because the battle for 8 years for anybody to acknowledge that there was anything wrong with me is, as you said, is traumatizing. There's just no words for it. And the rest that I needed in order to be able to actually recover from that traumatism was essential to being able to recover it all. So I think the traumatism of not being believed contributes gravely to one's condition of
I
illness,
agree.
which is just impossible to heal in that context. So anyway, one thing, I have a million things I could say because I just love your book. And I also wanted to say that finally, at last, the edition that you sent my brother was sent to me for Christmas. So I have it in my hands. And I'm not referring to the Kindle. I actually have the hardback. And thank you very much.
Thanks for
Thanks so
sharing
much.
that
Yeah.
story, Amanda. It's just always great for people to hear what it's like in other countries, because if you've never lived in another country, you cannot comprehend.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, and I've got to say, like, actually living in the UK when I did save my life, because I didn't even realize how sick I was. This is in 2003. I was actually not even, I was just 40, and I went to the general doctor there, and didn't even have the right visa yet, and they still took me, and I said, I don't have a national insurance number, and they're like, well, you wouldn't, would you? And they took me anyway, which almost made me cry.
Yeah.
And then they did all these blood tests. I was like, fine. I walked out. And then I just didn't expect anything. And then they sent a letter and they called me and like, you've got to come in. You're severely anemic. And I was like, what? And they like, and they were like looking for me. They found me and they made me, and I was just literally in floods of tears because I was just like, what is this crazy place? Like, and there was no one to give money to, or there wasn't even a now that's changed a little bit since Tory's creepy people, but that at that time there was nothing, and it was amazing. And yeah, so, and the only reason I came back to the States was that the Obamacare passed. I mean, I wouldn't have come back
Mm.
otherwise, but yeah. So I just want to read, is it, I hope you're saying your name right. She asked me to read it. Nakama. I hope that's right. If it's not, feel free to unmute yourself and tell me I'm wrong. And she had a question about hybrid stuff. Question related to what you just said, Julie, about writing these hybrid blended books. I love how you put it about that. That's just the way the story needs to be told. Do either of you have advice about getting these kinds of books published, finding agents, etc., when your book is non-standard? My book in progress is non-standard. I say non-standard with a lot of love and respect. Don't worry. Non-standard is our friend here. You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
So I think Lunden is better poised to say that. I mean, mine was a very tiny publisher, and so it's been tiny, and I've only gotten it to a certain amount of people, but as a consequence, so please buy my book. Um, but Lunden, you actually did, I had an agent for a while for a different thing, but that didn't work out. But you had an agent for this one, and how did that work for you?
Well, it's like I don't have good advice for that question. That's what I don't like saying. But I will also say, um, I I did 3 rounds of pitches over probably about a decade. Um, and each time I was probably pitching maybe 9 people. And I got all no's the first time, all no's the second time, and 1 yes the third time. And that was Mackenzie Brady Watson. And she's amazing. Like, I am so fortunate to have her. She really likes to be the agent of books that are about social justice. Um, and she replies to my email like within 24 hours. If she never doesn't, I know it's because she's busy. She's got a good heart and a good mind. Anyway, I just so scored. But you know, that was 1 out of 30 pitches, and some people it takes even longer. And I had people say, I can think of one editor in particular that somebody I met at residency put me in touch with. And the editor I mean, not the editor, agent, she turned me down with like a beautiful, rejection, saying basically like she loved what I was doing, but she didn't know how to sell it. And that's the thing. And so you even even when you get rejected by an agent, you can think of it as a good thing because that agent didn't know how to sell it. Or I had another agent, I thought he was my dream agent, but I actually know somebody who has him as an agent, and Mackenzie Brady Watson's my dream agent. But he actually honestly told me he just didn't love my writing. And that's a thing, right? That's I don't love writing of people, bestsellers or people that everybody, I don't love Emily Dickinson. That's, I just don't. So him just saying that made me like, okay, he doesn't like my writing. He couldn't sell it well if he's not passionate about it. So, one thing people do, you already know, maybe is, if there are other books that you like that are in the vein of yours, and that includes sort of complex books, blended hybrid books, go to the back to the acknowledgments and find out who their agent is, because they will likely thank their agent. And then also, like, I just kept my eyes and ears open. If I heard about an agent that I thought might be a good match, I added them to my list. And once I had, at some point, I would feel ready to try again. And then I would send all the pitches out. That's the best answer I've got. And also
Yeah. Oh,
going to places like Breadloaf, and I think the Swanee has a conference where there are agents there that you can pitch to. And sometimes there's these agent speed dating type things where you can do a very short pitch to agent, like basically taking any opportunity to meet up with agents can be helpful.
yeah, I agree. And I could paper literally, and somebody here who knows my life really well can attest to this. I could paper my entire room with, I love this so much and I don't know how to sell it, rejections that I've gotten
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
agents for my first book that still isn't out there yet. The one about my grandmother's, the one that has the reference to Alice James as a correspondent. Yeah, no, I mean literally, and huge agents too, like that read it. It's a massive book, but they just didn't know, and that's a real thing. Also, the other agent I did have briefly when I was writing a version of this memoir, but it was a version, realize now, I tried to, this is when I was up in Maine when we talked, I was trying to shoehorn, as you may recall, my diagnosis into a memoir that was really about my yoga and trauma thing. And a lot of people told me, well, just don't put in the diagnosis and just do the yoga trauma. But it was like, it was such a life shattering, life liberating moment that I I couldn't in any good conscience or even just psychologically spend years trying to write another memoir without that one, that big, huge piece being part of it. So even though that didn't work out, she pitched it. She actually took me and she pitched it. But again, the editors, same exact thing. It was like another whole round of we love it, but we don't know how to sell it. And in that case, I think it's because it was not quite right. So now I feel like I'm doing what I really want to be doing. I let go of this agent though, and I'll tell you why. I didn't have to, but I did, because what she would do is she kept asking me to change things after we'd already sent it out and pitched it to a number of people. And I would try, and then every time, then she would come back and say, okay, but I liked it better the first time. And that happened 3 times, not one, not two, but 3 times. The third time I was like, I don't think this is going to work out because you're telling me to do a thing. I tried to do the thing and it's not making you happy. So I left. And so I don't have an agent right now, but actually for where I am right now, where I really, really want to figure out what I'm doing with this thing. Also, what I'm going to be doing now, me and 5 million other people, I'm going to have enough to finally pitch it to the Gray Wolf. If you're doing a nonfiction, kind of unordinary nonfiction that has some social justice component to it, Gray Wolf has a thing in February. I think it's February this year. At the end, it's due by the end of February. Where you can submit like about 100 pages and a description of where you're at, etc. It's basically like a book proposal, except with a lot more pages than a usual book proposal, which is a long shot. It's such a long shot, it's hilarious. But I have decided to take time off from my life for the next couple of months to just try to send it there, because it's like it's the longest shot, but it's my best shot, or so you just find different ways.
Yeah, it's a great advice about Grey Wolf, because they really, we actually pitched my book to them, and it wasn't unusual enough in form for them. And so they really like things that bring something new in terms of how it's written.
That I will be doing. No, but like that doesn't mean it's going to be, but it's so funny because I believe them that they really want that, and I know they do, but it's so interesting how even when people say something like that, they have a lot of times they have an idea in mind of what they mean by that, and you may or may not be that thing. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So people are having to leave. So before, is anyone else that has to go soon have a question or a thought or a comment or anything? You don't have to, but if you do, feel free to. This would be a good time to come in. Okay. Okay. Shavite asked. I'll leave this to you right now for this one. What do you think about social media as a tool to bring attention to your work, like Instagram, Facebook? What is YT? Do I even know? Oh, YouTube. Oh, hello. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yes. Just quickly before we get to that, Yolanda, yes, I do. There's a whole YouTube channel under my name with all of the conversations I've had with all the authors, and this will be one of them. So just so you know, this will be on YouTube, and feel free to share it with other people. I'll be putting it up probably tonight sometime. So.
And Yolanda, feel free so I wrote about it in American Breakdown, but if you want to read the book that I got it from, you can message me, I know, on Facebook, and I can give you that.
Yeah. But what do you think about the social media question that Shavite asked?
That's a good question. Like, how important is it to selling a book, basically?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, from what I'm reading, a lot of publishers are like, well, what's your platform? Do you have a platform? And my delightful publisher, the editor was like, I don't care about a platform. People will buy your book because it's good. Which is great, but not everybody. I mean, there's definitely a thing about a platform, but like, what is a platform? It's not like 5,000 Facebook friends. It's like something beyond. I mean, it's like that's a whole career in itself. I don't have that.
She adds, or just using it as an avenue to get it to people. I would say Shavite these days, if you're just trying to get writing to people, I think your best bet is Substack these days, to be honest. Because it's a way people are using, it's kind of like a tricked up newsletter platform. Now there's a lot of it now, and I think it, getting people's attention at this point would be hard, but it's hard on any, and at least that one is writing centric, right? And in fact, I had a couple of pieces on Oldster, by the way. If you want to see an amazing Substack, look at Oldster, Sari thing. Actually, I have a talk with her. You can see on the YouTube channel, Sari Button, an amazing woman, and also just this is an incredible thing that she's done. And I mean, she's curating a lot of people's writing, including her own. And the couple of pieces I've had on there, I think have gotten more response than anything else I've ever written. I mean, I suddenly a bunch of books got sold because an excerpt was on there, and all this stuff. So I mean, I'm going to eventually have a Substack. I think I'm going to finally get cowed into that. But yeah, and yep, there's a lot of problems with them too. And yep, I mean, it goes any different way. I think that the moral of the many stories being told on the chat and amongst us is you kind of, now this is something I've learned to trust, because I've discovered something about being autistic, which is we have really good intuition. I always have done, but I've been taught to not listen to it. Now I'm listening to it, and my life's going a lot better as a consequence. Listen to your intuition, like meditate or whatever you do. You don't have to meditate. I know you hate meditating. Go get somebody else. There was a funny article in the Times about, you'll love this one. Don't want to meditate? Go find clams. I thought you would enjoy that. But anyway, being in Maine, but like, whatever you do to chill yourself out, go for a walk, run, eat clams, whatever. But like, just find out what you feel is your best option. Doesn't mean to not go ask general questions of people, but there was a thing about this, about what people succeeding and not succeeding in arts and stuff. And the thing they found, once even factoring in for everything, class, race, things, all the things, that in the end, the biggest thing was luck. It was just literally sheer luck. I mean, which is enough to make you want to shoot yourself, mind you, but nonetheless, it's true. So like there's not going to be one thing, it's not like this is the right thing and this is the wrong thing. And also the one piece of advice I did get once that I do think kind of holds, I don't know if you'd agree with this, Lyndon, or not, but was a woman who's, fairly, well known, right? Not super famous, but, well respected. And she said, when I was beginning to query with agents, she's like, as much as possible, be a machine. She's like, have 100 names and send out 10 at a time. She's like, because you're going to get rejections, you're going to get all these things, acceptances. And she said, the best piece of advice I ever got, and sometimes I can do it, and sometimes I can't, I'm going to be honest, but is to depersonalize it as much as humanly possible. Like, so realize that whatever happens has like less than zero to do with the quality of your work, and has to do with a million marketing concerns. I mean, okay, quality of work matters. Like, so work and workshops and people that you trust as writers to work on that part. Okay, like get your writing ducks in a row. But if you're not getting any really weird feedback about your writing from people you trust, it's not about your writing anymore. At that point, it's about luck. It's about finding the right thing at the right moment at the right time. And that's something that, the only way you're going to do it is to keep putting yourself out there. And you're going to and I've heard of stories of people finding people right away, and somebody who didn't find an agent till the 264th one they queried, literally.
Yeah.
So, and then they sold their book, so it's like, who knows?
So much has to do with taste, and that includes, applying for residencies, applying for awards, applying to get submitting to get published. So much just has to do with the taste of the person, and maybe in the mood of the person the day they read it. They're looking at so many things. And then I want to go back.
Before or after lunch. Before or after lunch. Seriously, like they found that with judges. I don't know if you read that, like about judges and things. Like if a judge reads something right before lunch, they're apt to, be more nasty in their thing than, their ruling than if it's after lunch. So I mean, You gotta like, so if you're sending anything in, just don't send it before lunch in case they happen to look at it, you know.
So I want to speak to that, the Substack and
Oh,
social media
yes.
thing, because I have, I mean, I had a friend encourage me to do Substack. He does Substack, and he does that instead of trying to get published everywhere else. He's a published writer. He's a beautiful writer. He's won awards. He writes about climate change. It's Jason Anthony. And uh, I cannot believe how much work he puts into it. And I cannot fathom making that kind of commitment. Like, I would rather be putting my energy into writing my next book or promoting my current book. So some people are finding Substack is really good, and it's obviously helped some people get really successful, like Heather Cox Richardson, yay her. Um, and I'm concerned, like, the market's flooded now, like everybody's got a Substack. So how do you get noticed? I don't know. So that's just my feeling about Substack. And I like your advice to, like, listen to your gut, basically. Think about what you want to do and what resonates with you. And for me, like, I love Facebook. I've tried all the other ones. I'm on a lot of some of the other ones. I'm trying to get into Instagram, but I'm just not very good at it. And I've made amazing connections through Facebook, including Julia, right? And I
I was
haven't,
gonna say, me too. In the end, that's been my best of all the things. And I didn't start even until 2014, pretty much with like a gun to my head. I didn't want to do it. But my best, if I'm honest, that's where I found my best connections too.
and for me, that's how I finally have a writing community, which I've never in my life had. And now I have friends. And I've gotten, I posted something that somebody asked me to write an essay. I think it was for creative nonfiction. I ended up putting a piece in creative nonfiction because of some post. Another time I wrote a post, and a well-respected writer said, make that into an essay. So I did, and it went into long reads. And um, and for me, like, it's a way to feel, of course it has an impact. Like, I'm posting about American Breakdown and people care, because I'm not just posting about American Breakdown. I'm posting pictures of my dog and telling, true stories from my life. Um and for me, it's a way to not feel powerless. Like, I want to get the word out about my book. I want people to read it, share it, tell other people about it. I like the feeling of community that I have on Facebook. And I'll say one other thing, which is my friend Sophia Ali Khan, who wrote the book A Good Country: My Life in 12 Towns and the Devastating Battle for a White America, which is a great book. She is working on her second book now. It's a novel, and she's starting to look into Instagram and TikTok. TikTok sells books, but I'm but she was talking to me about like Bookstagram and making videos on Bookstagram. And again, that's all, like, new to me, but I'm curious to see what she does. And, like, she did name some other people who are doing it that people really listen to. And so that's another avenue that some people could maybe look into doing.
But it's interesting because the agent that I had briefly, that she knew a bunch of the editors that she was pitching to, and one of them was at, I think, at Harper Wave at your place. And one of them, they got somebody at a huge Instagram platform, massive, like millions, like one of those kind of people, and the book did not sell well. And I think, see, this is, but my theory is, if you get used to a bunch of free content on Instagram and you're just used to looking at little stuff, you don't want to read a whole book. You're used to looking at little stuff. Now some people might, now TikTok is really weird, and basically you just have to catch the heart of a Gen Zer and then they'll love you and buy a million of your books, apparently, which is great. I have nothing against them. I kind of love Gen Z, to be honest. But it's like that again, sheer luck. It's like they're either going to dig your thing or they're not going to dig your thing. And I don't think there's a lot to it. I tried TikTok briefly and it just made me, I just couldn't. I mean,
Yeah.
I couldn't wrap my mind around. I don't know. And there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, if you're like, again, it's a gut thing. It's like, where do you naturally, it's, that little Spinoza thing, right? About the different bodies, and two bodies can enhance each other or two bodies can diminish each other. And it's not about ethics are bad or good. It's just about which body. So you got to kind of feel like if a platform seems like it's expanding your life and expanding you, great. If it just feels like it's draining you, I wouldn't spend a lot of time there because it's not going to stop draining you.
Yeah, agreed.
Also, don't submit to places. This is another thing. Don't submit to places or agents or anybody who promotes or publishes work you don't like, because they're not going to like your work. Like, it's just like, don't do that to yourself. Like, why? Like, even if they're a big name, who cares? If you don't like their work, they're not going to like your work. I mean, the end. It's just simple, and it's like, it gets, you know what I mean? It's like, you can get like this weird thing where like, oh, but that's a big deal person, so I've got to go there. And it's like you said about your dream agent, right? Your dream
Yeah.
agent turns out to be the one you have, and you didn't think that was your dream agent, but she is. So
And I
there you
found her through the
go.
binders, by the way. She
Yeah,
did an interview in the big binder back at the very beginning, early on.
mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
we're over time.
Yeah, we're way over time now. So I think I'm going to wrap up the formal part of this. And if what I'm going to do before is I'm going to stop the recording. So if anyone has a question or a thought they really don't want recorded, but they wanted to ask, I'll be here for a few more minutes. I can't speak for London because I don't want to force her.
I'm here.
And okay. But I want to thank you so much for your book and for being here and for everybody for listening and amazing questions. And yeah, I mean, this has just been a great series. I'm going to be on hiatus for a while because I'm going to be focusing on my own writing, which especially now I know I can't both be focusing outward and inward. Another part of being autistic is monotropism, meaning you're easier in one channel or another, but switching between is really, really hard. So I'm beginning to learn what works, and it's taking me a long time. So do you want to say any last words, Lyndon? You can have the last word if you would like.
I thank you all for being here. It's been such a pleasure. And thanks for all the comments that you've made in the chat. I'm hope Julie, after you've gone, Julie and I are going to stay on long enough for me to make sure I've read them all.
Yes, we definitely will. You can also save chats, so you can save them as text. So you can do that too if you're overwhelmed. So I lied, didn't give you the last word. So thank you. And yeah, thanks.